Commander Zethkar adjusted his tactical display with practiced efficiency, his forearms working in perfect coordination as data streams flowed across the holographic interface. The bridge of the Galactic Coalition warship Eternal Vigilance hummed with activity as officers from a dozen different species coordinated the largest military operation in recorded history. Status report. Zethkar commanded, his voice carrying the authority that had earned him command of the Coalition's most elite battle group. As a Vorthuk, his species had dominated galactic warfare for 3 millennia. Their superior tactical minds and natural aggression had made them the backbone of the Coalition military. Lieutenant Kiris's, a slender Alterian with crystalline skin that reflected the bridge's blue lighting, turned from her station. "Sir, we have confirmation from all fleet elements. 2,000 warships are in position around the Zareth home system. The enemy has nowhere to run." Zethkar nodded grimly. The Zareth Collective had been a plague upon the galaxy for too long. Their biomechanical ships consumed entire worlds, converting organic matter into more vessels for their endless swarm. Hundreds of civilizations had fallen before them, entire species reduced to mere footnotes in galactic history. "What's our intelligence on their defensive capabilities?" asked Colonel Franduk, the Krillian tactical officer whose insectoid features remained impassive despite the magnitude of the operation ahead. "Preliminary scans indicate approximately 5,000 Zareth vessels defending their core worlds," Kiris's replied. "Our numerical advantage should be sufficient, but their adaptive technology remains problematic." Zethkar studied the tactical display, watching as red dots representing Zareth ships moved in complex patterns around their homeworld. The Coalition had never faced odds quite like this. Every previous engagement with the Collective had been costly, even in victory. Their ships learned from each encounter, adapting their defenses and weapons to counter Coalition tactics. "Sir," interrupted Communications Officer Veltar, his tentacled appendages dancing across his console, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Coalition High Command." The main screen flickered, revealing the imposing figure of Supreme Admiral Quainthara, a draconian whose scales had been scarred by decades of warfare. Her reputation for tactical brilliance was matched only by her ruthless pragmatism. "Commander Zethkar," she began without preamble, "intelligence has uncovered disturbing information about Zareth capabilities. Our xenorchaeologists have been studying recovered data cores from their vessels." Zethkar straightened. "What have they discovered, Admiral?" "The Zareth have been accessing something they call the Archive of Extinct Civilizations. It appears to be a vast database containing tactical information, weapon designs, and military strategies from every species they've consumed." Quainthara's expression grew darker. "They're not just learning from our current tactics. They're drawing upon the accumulated military knowledge of thousands of dead civilizations." The bridge fell silent. The implications were staggering. The Coalition had always assumed their technological superiority would eventually overwhelm the Zareth through attrition. If the enemy could access the combined military wisdom of extinct species, the calculation changed dramatically. "There's more," the Admiral continued. "Our researchers found references to something called Emergency Protocol Omega. The Zareth only activate this when facing what they consider an existential threat. Intelligence believes they may implement it if they perceive this attack as potentially successful." Colonel Throndak's mandibles clicked nervously. "What does this protocol entail?" "Unknown. The data was heavily encrypted, and our best cryptographers are still working on it. What we do know is that every reference to Protocol Omega mentions something called the Forgotten Ones and Coordinates for a system on the Galactic Rim." Zethkar frowned. The Galactic Rim was largely unexplored, considered too dangerous for most species due to the unstable stellar phenomena and lack of resources. Several Coalition survey missions had been lost in that region over the centuries. "Admiral, are you ordering us to abort the attack?" "Negative, Commander. The fleet has committed too many resources to this operation. You will proceed as planned, but be aware that the Zareth may have capabilities we haven't encountered before. Monitor for any unusual activity, particularly anything relating to long-range communications toward the galactic rim. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge crew to contemplate this new information. Sethkar returned his attention to the tactical display, noting that the Zareth formations had shifted slightly. Were they already adapting to the Coalition's presence? "Begin final approach," he ordered. "All ships, battle formation Kappa 7. Weapons hot, shields at maximum." The massive Coalition fleet began moving toward the Zareth home system like a slow-moving avalanche of destruction. 2,000 of the galaxy's most advanced warships, crewed by the finest warriors from dozens of species, all focused on a single objective: the complete eradication of the Zareth threat. As the first long-range sensors began picking up detailed scans of enemy positions, something unexpected appeared on the tactical display. Lieutenant Kyrus stared at her readings, confusion evident in her crystalline features. "Sir, I'm detecting an anomaly. The Zareth ships. They're not moving to intercept us." Sethkar moved to her station, studying the sensor data himself. She was correct. Instead of forming defensive lines or preparing ambush positions, the Zareth vessels were withdrawing toward their homeworld in what appeared to be a protective formation. "They're scared," suggested Thranduck, though his tone lacked conviction. "No," Sethkar replied slowly. "They're preparing something. All ships reduce approach speed. Deploy reconnaissance drones and maintain safe distance until we understand their intentions." The Coalition fleet slowed, thousands of sensor drones racing ahead to gather intelligence on Zareth activities. What they discovered sent chills through even the most experienced officers. The Zareth weren't preparing for a defensive battle. They were conducting some sort of massive ritual or ceremony around their central planet. Hundreds of their biomechanical ships had formed intricate geometric patterns, with energy flowing between them in complex weaves of power. "Sir," Kyrus reported, her voice tight with concern, "I'm detecting massive energy buildups throughout the Zareth formation. Power levels are off the charts. Weapons targeting us?" "Negative. The energy appears to be focused ... elsewhere. Long-range sensors are picking up some kind of transmission being sent toward the galactic rim." Sethkar felt a cold certainty settle in his stomach. Protocol Omega was being activated. Whatever the Zareth were doing, it was beyond anything the Coalition had prepared for. "All ships, emergency acceleration. We need to disrupt whatever they're doing before—" His words were cut off as the space around the Zareth homeworld suddenly erupted in brilliant light. The energy patterns they had been weaving reached a crescendo, and reality itself seemed to bend and twist around their fleet. When the light faded, the tactical display showed something impossible. A massive rift had opened in space, stretching across thousands of kilometers. Through it, shadowy shapes could be seen moving in the darkness between stars. "What in the name of the void is that?" whispered Thranduck. Before anyone could answer, Kyrus's console erupted in alarms. "Sir, massive energy surge from the rift. Something's coming through." The first ship that emerged from the dimensional tier was unlike anything in the Coalition databases. Its design was angular and utilitarian, lacking the organic curves of Zareth biotechnology or the elegant lines of Coalition vessels. It was painted in dull colors that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. More ships followed. Dozens, then hundreds, all sharing the same functional aesthetic. They moved with purpose and precision, taking up formation positions with military efficiency that impressed even veteran Coalition officers. "Are they Zareth reinforcements?" asked Thranduck. "Negative," Kyrus replied, studying her readings. "These ships don't match any known Zareth configuration. The materials, energy signatures, even their basic design principles are completely foreign." Sethkar stared at the emerging fleet with growing unease. In his centuries of military service, he had encountered weapons and technologies from across the galaxy. These ships felt different. Primitive in some ways, yet carrying themselves with the confidence of a species that had seen real war. "Sir," interrupted Veltar from communications, "we're receiving a transmission from the unknown fleet. It's in standard Coalition frequencies, but the encryption is unlike anything I've seen." Put it through. The main screen flickered, revealing a figure that made several bridge officers step back in surprise. The being appeared humanoid, but was strangely proportioned compared to known species. Its skin was pale, almost colorless, and its eyes held an intensity that spoke of worlds burned and battles fought in the darkness between stars. When it spoke, its voice carried an accent that suggested a language far older than any in the Coalition databases. "Coalition fleet," the figure began. "You are ordered to withdraw from this system immediately. The Zareth Collective falls under the protection of the Terran Expeditionary Force." Zethkar found his voice. "This is Commander Zethkar of the Galactic Coalition. Identify yourself and state your..." 3 weeks after the Zareth homeworld fell, Coalition Command found itself in an unprecedented situation. For the first time in galactic history, they were hosting a species that officially didn't exist. Admiral Chun stood in the center of the Coalition's most secure conference facility on the capital world of Centrum Prime, surrounded by representatives from every major civilization in known space. Her presence seemed to make the vast chamber feel smaller somehow, as if her very existence compressed the possibilities of what the assembled beings had thought was real. Chancellor Mordic of the Altarian Congress shifted uncomfortably in his crystalline chair. As the current head of the Coalition government, he had seen his share of diplomatic challenges, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. How did one negotiate with a species that had been declared extinct for 12 millennia? "Admiral Chun," he began carefully, "we appreciate humanity's intervention in the Zareth crisis. However, the Coalition Council requires clarification on several matters before we can proceed with formal recognition." Chun nodded politely, though several council members noticed she hadn't taken the offered seat. She remained standing, hands clasped behind her back in a posture that suggested military readiness rather than diplomatic submission. "Of course, Chancellor. What would you like to know?" "First," interjected General Crickstar of the Hegemony Military Council, his reptilian features displaying obvious irritation, "your forces demonstrated technology beyond anything in our databases. We need to understand the extent of human capabilities." Chun's expression remained neutral. "General, are you asking about our technology for purposes of scientific exchange or threat assessment?" The directness of her question caused uncomfortable stirring among the delegates. Most galactic diplomacy involved elaborate verbal dances around such obvious implications. "We need to know," Mordic said slowly, "whether humanity represents a threat to galactic stability." "An interesting question." Chun activated a holographic projector, filling the air above the conference table with a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. "Tell me, Chancellor, how many species currently exist within Coalition space?" "Approximately 4,000 civilized species," Mordic replied, uncertain where this was leading. "And how many species existed when the Coalition was first formed?" "Roughly 6,000. Red dots began appearing on the galactic map, each one marking the location of an extinct civilization. The display was sobering. Nearly 1/3 of all known species had vanished during the Coalition's existence. "Now," Chun continued, "tell me about your military record against existential threats. How many species-ending conflicts has the Coalition successfully resolved without outside intervention?" The silence stretched uncomfortably. Every delegate present knew the answer. The Coalition had a perfect record of failure when it came to preventing genocide. They had managed to contain threats, sometimes negotiate temporary truces, but never completely eliminate an existential danger to galactic civilization. "Zero," whispered Science Coordinator Velish from her position near the chamber's edge. "Correct." Chun gestured, and the holographic display changed to show battle footage from the Zareth engagement. Humanity resolved the Zareth threat in 43 minutes of actual combat. We didn't negotiate, contain, or postpone the problem. We eliminated it. General Crickstar leaned forward aggressively. "Admiral, are you suggesting that Coalition military doctrine is inadequate?" "I'm not suggesting anything, General. I'm stating it directly." Chun's voice carried no malice, just matter-of-fact assessment. Your military philosophy is based on the assumption that war is a failure of diplomacy. You fight to minimize casualties and preserve galactic stability. And what's wrong with that approach? Demanded Counselor Thekmar, her feline features bristling with indignation. Nothing, if you're facing enemies who share your values. But existential threats don't care about minimizing casualties or preserving stability. They care about achieving their objectives regardless of cost. Chen paused, studying the faces around the table. The Zareth were 3 months away from completing their universal converter. Your approach would have given them those 3 months while you debated response strategies. The implications hung heavy in the air. Chancellor Mordick cleared his throat nervously. Admiral, assuming your assessment is correct, what does humanity propose? We propose nothing, Chancellor. We're informing you of what we're going to do. The holographic display shifted again, now showing human fleet movements across the galaxy. Humanity has identified 17 active threats to galactic civilization that the Coalition has classified as containment priority rather than elimination priority, more uncomfortable stirring. Those 17 threats represented some of the most dangerous ongoing crises in Coalition space, conflicts that had consumed enormous resources and countless lives over the decades. We will be addressing these threats directly, starting with the void touched in the Andromeda spiral and working outward from there. General Quickstar slammed his hand on the table. Absolutely not. The Coalition cannot permit unilateral military action within sovereign space. Jian's response was delivered with terrifying calm. General, you seem to be operating under the mistaken impression that you have a choice in this matter. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Several delegates unconsciously moved away from the human admiral, evolutionary instincts recognizing a predator in their midst. Is that a threat? Demanded Crickstar, rising to his feet. It's a statement of fact. Humanity spent 13,000 years becoming very good at killing things that needed killing. We've returned to find that this galaxy is infested with threats that should have been eliminated millennia ago. Chun gestured toward the display showing the 17 target locations. You can choose to cooperate with our operations or simply stay out of our way. Those are your options. Chancellor Mordick struggled to maintain diplomatic composure. Admiral, surely we can find some middle ground. The Coalition has protocols for— Chancellor, Chun interrupted. Let me share something with you that might clarify humanity's position. The holographic display changed once more, now showing a star chart of unprecedented detail. The assembled delegates gasped as they recognized the scope. It wasn't just their local galaxy, but dozens of parallel dimensions and alternate realities stretching into cosmic infinity. This is the multidimensional space that humanity has been operating in for the past 13,000 years. Each of these realities represents a different version of our galaxy, and in each one, we've encountered the same pattern. She pointed to various locations on the vast display. Peaceful civilizations form coalitions. They develop impressive technology and sophisticated diplomatic protocols. They achieve remarkable scientific advances and create beautiful cultures. The display began highlighting specific points in red. And then they encounter existential threats that their peaceful philosophy cannot handle. They debate, negotiate, and seek compromise solutions while their worlds burn. More red points appeared. In 93% of observed realities, advanced galactic civilizations ultimately fall to existential threats that could have been eliminated with sufficient military action. The implications were staggering. Science Coordinator Velish found her voice. You're saying, you've seen versions of us die? Thousands of them. Hyun's expression softened slightly. That's why we're here. This particular iteration of galactic civilization shows unusual promise. Your technological development is impressive, your cultural diversity is remarkable, and your diplomatic achievements are genuinely admirable. But, prompted Mordick, but you've made the same mistake as every other peaceful civilization. You've become so committed to avoiding the moral cost of necessary violence that you've made yourselves vulnerable to those who embrace it. The chamber fell silent as delegates contemplated this assessment. Finally, Counselor Thekmar spoke up. What you're describing sounds like a military dictatorship on a galactic scale. An understandable concern, Chun replied. Which is why humanity has no interest in governing galactic civilization. We want to preserve it, not control it. General Krickstar remained skeptical. And what guarantee do we have that humanity won't simply replace the threats you eliminate? Chun's smile was genuinely amused. General, if humanity wanted to conquer the galaxy, do you honestly believe we would have bothered with this conversation? Our dimensional drives give us access to infinite realities with uninhabited worlds. Our weapons technology allows us to eliminate threats that your forces can barely contain. What could we possibly gain by conquering a single galaxy when we have access to the entire multiverse? The logic was undeniable, though disturbing. A species with such capabilities would indeed have little interest in conventional conquest. So what do you want from us? Mordic asked. Cooperation when possible, non-interference when necessary, and information sharing for mutual benefit. Chun gestured toward the display. Humanity has developed counter-strategies for most existential threat types, but each reality has unique variations. Your scientific databases and historical records could help us adapt our approaches more efficiently. And in return? Continued existence. The brutal simplicity of Chun's statement sent. 6 months after humanity's return, Commander Zethkar found himself in the strangest position of his military career, serving as a liaison officer aboard a human warship. The UES Nemesis was unlike any vessel he had ever experienced, from its utilitarian quarters to its crew's unsettling competence. Commander, called Captain Torres from the bridge command station, we're approaching the Helix Nebula. Your coalition forces should begin their withdrawal sequence now. Zethkar nodded, though part of him wanted to protest. The Helix Nebula had been a coalition research station for over 2 centuries, studying the unique quantum phenomena that made faster-than-light communication possible. Now it was being evacuated because humanity had detected something the coalition's best scientists had missed for 200 years. All coalition vessels. This is Liaison Command, he spoke into his communicator. Begin Evacuation Protocol 7. All research materials and personnel to be clear of the nebula within the next 4 hours. On the view screen, he could see the coalition ships moving away from the research station with obvious reluctance. The nebula represented decades of scientific advancement and thousands of careers' worth of research. Abandoning it felt like surrender. Something bothering you, Commander? Asked Lieutenant Sarah Kim, the human tactical officer whose age couldn't have been more than 30 standard years, but whose eyes held the weight of someone who had seen civilizations fall. Just uncertainty, Zethkar admitted. Your species has been correct about every threat you've identified, but this is different. The Helix Nebula has been peaceful for 2 centuries. Captain Torres turned from his command station. Like all humans Zethkar had encountered, the man possessed an intensity that was both fascinating and disturbing. Commander, show him the sensor logs from yesterday. The main display shifted to show detailed scans of the nebula's quantum structure. To Zethkar's trained eye, everything appeared normal, the same exotic matter formations and energy patterns that had made the nebula valuable for research. I don't see anything unusual, he said. Look closer, suggested Kim, highlighting specific sections of the scan. Notice the pattern in the quantum fluctuations? Zethkar studied the data more carefully. There were subtle variations in the energy readings, but nothing that seemed significant. These appear to be normal quantum variants. That's exactly what we thought 6 months ago, Torres said grimly. Until our xenorchaeologists cross-referenced the patterns with data recovered from Zareth archives. The display changed, now showing a comparison between the nebula's quantum patterns and something from the Zareth database. The similarity was undeniable and terrifying. The Zareth didn't discover this pattern, Kim explained. They created it. The Helix Nebula isn't a natural phenomenon. It's a quantum beacon they placed here centuries ago. Zethkar felt his blood run cold. The implications were staggering. If the nebula was artificial, then the Coalition's entire faster-than-light communication network was potentially compromised. A beacon for what? Something we really hope we never have to find out, Torres replied. But given that 17 other natural phenomena in Coalition space show similar patterns, we're not taking any chances. The tactical display updated as more human ships moved into position around the nebula. Zethkar counted at least 50 vessels, all carrying weapons that defied conventional understanding of physics. The humans had developed technology that made even their smallest frigates more dangerous than Coalition dreadnoughts. "Captain," interrupted the communications officer, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Admiral Chun." The main screen flickered, revealing the familiar figure of humanity's military commander. In the months since first contact, she had become the most recognizable face in galactic politics and the most feared. "Captain Torres' status report. Coalition evacuation proceeding on schedule, Admiral. All research personnel and materials will be clear within 3 hours." "Excellent. Commander Zethkar, how are your people handling the relocation?" Zethkar straightened. Despite months of interaction, speaking directly with Chun still felt like standing next to a barely contained explosion. "There's understandable concern about abandoning so much research, Admiral, but no open resistance." "Good, because what we're about to show you may change the Coalition's entire approach to scientific exploration." Chun's image was replaced by a three-dimensional model of the galaxy, with thousands of highlighted points scattered across Coalition space. Each point pulsed with the same quantum signature that the nebula exhibited. "Over the past 6 months," Chun's voice continued over the display, "human archaeological teams have identified over 3,000 artificial quantum structures throughout Coalition territory. Some are disguised as nebulae, others as asteroid fields or planetary rings. All of them are broadcasting the same base-level signal." Torres gestured to the tactical station. "Commander, you might want to sit down for this next part." The galactic map zoomed in, showing the signal pathways between the various structures. What emerged was a complex network spanning the entire galaxy, with nodes positioned at strategic locations that corresponded exactly to major Coalition population centers. "It's a surveillance network," Zethkar whispered. "Worse," Kim replied. "It's a targeting system. Every major Coalition world, every important installation, every significant military base, they're all being monitored by quantum beacons that predate your civilization by thousands of years." The implications were beyond terrifying. Someone had been watching galactic civilization since before the Coalition even existed, mapping their expansion and cataloging their capabilities. "Who built it?" Zethkar asked, though he dreaded the answer. Admiral Chun's voice returned. "We call them the architects. They're a species so ancient that they existed before the current galactic star formation cycle. Most of their technology operates on principles that won't be discovered for another 1,000,000 years of normal scientific development. Are they still active? Unknown. But the network has been growing more active since humanity returned to normal space. Something about our dimensional technology appears to have triggered increased signal traffic." Captain Torres moved to the navigation station. "Admiral, all Coalition forces have cleared the target zone. We're ready to begin the test." "Proceed, Captain." "Let's see what happens when we poke one of these things." The Nemesis began moving toward the nebula with purpose that made Zethkar's tactical instincts scream warnings. Human ships didn't approach unknown threats. They approached prey. "Captain," he said carefully, "what exactly are we testing? Whether these beacons can be safely neutralized or whether they're designed to respond to interference." Torres's expression was grim. "Either way, we need to know." The ship's weapon systems came online, though they looked nothing like conventional armaments. Instead of energy cannons or missile tubes, the humans had deployed devices that seemed to bend space around themselves. "Dimensional disruption charges," Kim explained, noting his confusion. "They don't destroy matter, they relocate it to alternate dimensional spaces where it can't affect our reality. And if the beacon is connected to something that doesn't appreciate being disrupted? Then we find out what we're really dealing with. Torres said simply. The first charge detonated in a sphere of twisted light that made reality itself seem to stutter. The quantum beacon that had masqueraded as a natural nebula for centuries simply ceased. One moment it was there, the next it existed only as empty space. For several minutes, nothing happened. Sensor readings remained normal, and the surrounding space showed no unusual activity. Zethkar began to hope that the beacon had been as simple as it appeared. Then every alarm on the ship began screaming, simultaneously. "Contact!" Kim shouted over the noise. Something massive just entered the system. The main display switched to tactical view, showing space around their position. What they saw defied comprehension. A structure the size of a small moon had simply appeared, its surface covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. "Architect vessel," Torres said with remarkable calm. "All ships, battle formation Delta. Weapons free?" "Captain," Zethkar protested, "shouldn't we attempt communication first?" "Commander, we tried communication with the architects for 3,000 years across dozens of dimensional realities. They don't talk. They just respond." The alien ship began moving toward the human fleet with impossible grace, its surface rippling like liquid while maintaining its solid structure. As it approached, smaller objects began detaching from its hull, objects that resolved into ships the size of coalition cruisers. 57 boogies and counting, Kim reported. Energy signatures are unusual. They appear to be operating on quantum uncertainty principles. They exist and don't exist simultaneously, Torres explained to Zethkar. Makes them difficult to target with conventional weapons. How do you fight something like that? By making reality more certain than they can handle. The captain's smile was predatory. All ships activate quantum stabilization fields. Make these bastards choose whether they want to exist or not. The space around the human fleet began to shimmer as their ships deployed technology that forced quantum states to resolve into definite forms. The architect vessels suddenly became fully solid and vulnerable.